looked at a pretty solid model this morning, one of many that are out there. And of course, a model will only serve its purpose if the application of that model is useful. And by useful, in this sense, what we're talking about is the usefulness in being able to establish a good client relationship. And having listened to some of the challenges that have been voiced this morning as well around the room, we can see that that's going to be quite fundamental, isn't it, to us being able to successfully use the model within any business setting. So I thought it might be useful for us to have a think about how we build relationships and how we even start to measure our own success in that area, and how we even measure the impact that we make on other people as well. Because if we want to become a strategic partner within the business, then one of the things we need to do is certainly raise our credibility. We also need to then be able to have a relationship where people are wanting to listen to us and trust us as well. Would you agree with that? Yeah? So having a think about maybe the intention that our communication has versus the impact that it has as well. We may well intend to try and find out lots and lots of information about that particular stakeholder in order that we can provide them with the best use of the model. If our intention, though, has a negative impact on people, then we can start to see where the barriers and blockers will be immediately. So we're then in a position where we're starting to think about, okay, overcoming barriers rather than progressing training or whatever it is that you're looking to deliver forward. There's a really good book that I love, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and one of the habits there talks about seek first to understand. Has anybody read that book, by the way, and know that chapter? Yeah, how would you summarise that particular chapter?
Literally that, seek to understand or being understood.
Yeah.
So listening, asking questions, because it won't be what you need to then to understand actually changes.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. So it is about our ability to not just tell our stakeholders what the situation is or where we believe the returns can be made for them. It's actually, first of all, asking them the questions to understand where their needs and drivers are, so that we can then start to apply the model to suit them. Yeah? So in many senses, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, is it? We've all been in meetings, and even today maybe, where there are people that we come into contact with that we can make a very good relationship with very easily and comfortably, and others who we struggle with. Yeah? When you are an internal consultant, when you're looking to build those stakeholder relationships, though, your level of self-awareness needs to be second to none in many ways. And you need to be able to identify how you're impacting the different partners that you're communicating with. And you need to be able to adapt what you currently do to fit their needs. It doesn't mean that we have to turn pink and fluffy if we prefer to be very direct and concise. It doesn't mean that at all, but what it does mean is that we need to be aware of how we behave and what impact that has on other people around us. So think about first impressions, yeah, this morning when you first came in and we moved you into 4 teams, yeah? Think about the first impressions that were created within those 4 teams as well. Think about your own personal impact. Think about, is there anything that you would want to do differently? Think about, does it relate in any way to how my relationships run with my stakeholders as well? And what can I learn and what can I start to think about doing slightly differently? Seek first to understand before you can be understood is absolutely critical. Also thinking, though, about what are we intending to communicate and what's the impact? Yeah? Are we coming across like we're just there to fact find and that's it? Or are we actually trying to understand the people that we're talking to so that we can start talking in a language and a manner that will give us the best chance of success in winning them over from maybe their current viewpoint about the value of whatever it is you're trying to sell, because that's what it is in essence. Is there anything we can do to change that? So it's really just posing some questions for you to consider. thinking about some of the challenges that you face at the moment, I know we had a couple raised on this table, I think it was, yeah. What do you think will be useful to consider with those challenges? Can you remind me of one of them? The challenge that came up. Come on, I can't remember who it was. Somebody said something about making those managers get involved.
Yeah, line managers are people, participants on the programme.
Yeah.
The company, I mean, I don't work in the same company, we provide the training for them. The line managers are not engaging with the training for their staff.
Yeah.
And therefore you can't start to analyse what their needs are or what the impact would be.
No. So that's a common theme, I would imagine, across many organisations that you all work in or are involved in as well. So what sort of thing can we do to change that mindset, or even consider how we introduce the concept of line management engagement? Yeah.
And then frequently, so then they have the chance to meet their issues. It's not just the courses set in stone, and this is what you do, tick, tick, tick.
Spot on.
Yeah. They can actually say, well, we've actually got an issue with this. And because you'll meet then all the line managers in that course, and probably won't be more than 6 or 7, so it's not an enormous number, you can think, well, there's a theme coming out here. Maybe we need to change the programme a bit and add this in or do an extra module. So you're actually listening to them, and they feel that they're not just there to sort of act as, oh, this is my role.
Yeah.
It's much easier to have control over that if you're delivering within your own organisation.
Yes.
When you're brought in as an external deliverer, it's very hard to tell the organisation how to behave.
Absolutely, Carolyn. And I think from our experience, certainly in working very closely as an external provider, one of the things that we find really useful is to engage with those line managers, maybe in a sort of forum type setting, or a training assessment requirement meeting, so that you can actually start to get underneath the skin a little bit of that particular department. So internally or externally, those are things that could be quite useful for you to consider. And you can start to then assess the types of challenges, characters and blockers that you're likely to face as well within those relationships.
But until you actually meet those line managers, you can't do anything.
It's about relationships, isn't it?
And again, as an external provider, you can't really have much control over that.
Carolyn, I think one of the challenges I've had with a lot of line managers that I train externally is that if they're not consulted at the start, it's something that I do insist upon, then we're actually almost implying that they haven't trained their staff very well, and we're now imposing a regime that they've had no say in, which causes the resistance to actually implementing
that
anything
could be
back.
what's happened. I was told the opposite, of course.
No, but
they would say that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but I make a point now of saying I must meet them before I'm going to do things, because we need their buy-in. And unless they're going to implement us back in the workforce, then there's no point in doing anything at all. So
I think in the broader picture, though, you're quite right. That it's about creating a relationship, isn't it? With not just people at the very top of the organisation, but throughout the organisation as well, so that you can generate this engagement. And that engagement might be to help you identify what are going to be the best metrics to use as an evaluation tool, or that relationship might be to actually help identify what they want to achieve and what the business requires them to achieve at the end of that training intervention as well. But it is all about relationships. Yeah, that particular point. You can have the model, yeah, you can take the model away. If you want to be successful with it, then it is thinking a little bit more about how you generate those relationships.